or that
Yeah.
are wrong with the scene or that are wrong with queer people interacting
Yeah.
with each other. Here, you can do that. Whereas in Glasgow, it's a little bit harder to sift through the shit because there's so much of it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there
I do.
also is, yeah, there's pros and cons about everything. But I think that's where, for me at least, I value living rurally more than anything else is the community that's came from it. Like the people that we're friends with
Hmm.
have been some of the best people I've ever met in my life since I
Hmm.
moved back here. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's totally changed my life. I know that Joe can also say that it's definitely changed the way that he socializes and the way that, you and Murray socialize. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, it's a lovely thing, really. Hello, I have
Hello. Yeah.
returned.
Just on the subject, you know, of like the gay community and the scene, and how you mentioned, because when I moved to Leeds from Wakefield, I sort of moved from Wakefield because I got fed up with the scene in Wakefield. It became really toxic and stuff, and I started to struggle with drink and things. I thought, oh, well, I'll just move to Leeds. I'll get away from sort of people I know, escape. But then the scene in Leeds is big scene, as you know, if you've ever been to Leeds, Queen's Court, Fibre, and all of those viaducts and the sort of New Penny and stuff, which is decades old, is a New Penny. But although it felt nice because it was bigger, and I was like, oh, this is all new and this is great and stuff. It very quickly became very toxic and poisonous. And it's almost like what you said right at the very beginning about getting picked for gigs, Jordan, is that if you don't know, then you're not going to get anywhere. And it was all this, you're a newcomer, and I was disappointed because where Wakefield was very sort of welcoming to new people, I was welcomed by loads of people. As soon as they came on scene, they were like, oh, hey, we got a new chicken at 28. And they were really good and they were nice, and everybody was like, oh, you're new and stuff, and we'll help you, and, sort of tread that path of just coming out. Whereas honestly, I think, because it's a big scene and it's a big city, I think it gives license sometimes to that toxicity to grow. And you got those cliques of people, and they're not very nice to new people. And if you don't have this in those days, it was the sort of Mohican cuts and the ripped jeans and stuff. If you didn't have everything perfect deemed to be, then they weren't very nice, and it affects people's mental health massively. And I have seen the scene sort of hurt people to the point that they've ended up doing something to themselves, like attempted suicide and turned to addictions and things. Because if you aren't sort of in the clique, it can ruin you. And it's a really sort of fast-paced environment. You've got to keep up with all the stuff. And moving here for me was just so great, because although I was single for 2 years, trying to come to terms with my own mental health after me and the husband split up, and, processing things and going through therapy. Coming and living in a rural environment, as scary as it was, has just done me so much good. Because I think when we're gay, there's almost this thing of where we've got to be like, I thought when I came out, I had to be camp, right? So I tried the whole camp thing, not with this gob. It doesn't really work because I'm too
I
deep.
can only
And
imagine. I can only imagine you with this thick Yorkshire accent, be like, "Oh, what you like?" Cutting about.
Well, I just
Yo.
rang around with a skinhead with his 18-hole DMs on, and he was called Paul, but his singing name was Polly. And then there was a very old guy, I don't even know if he's alive now, but he was that old that he was illegal for a period and got arrested lots of times in London. And he was called Eddie, but Edwina on the scene, and I was called Bernadette on the scene. And it's like, it took me ages, and I think that ruined my mental health, because I was trying to be something that I thought that I should be because of what media portrays us to be, and it just didn't help at all. I think it's just an important message for people. If there's anybody who's thinking of, you mentioned people who've been in the closet earlier, if you're thinking of taking that dive and going, actually, this is who I am, just still be who you are if you're happy with who you are, because it's still going to be accepted by people. You don't need to be something that you're not, because it might make your mental health even worse when you come out.
Hmm.
Because then you're
Yeah.
just going to then, not only you've got to deal with a new sexuality and a new way of living and sort of bank account, or not really a bank account, but you know what I mean? If you're then trying to be something that you're not, you're going to end up making it even worse for yourself, because then you're going to get
Yeah.
really lost and you're not going to know where the hell you're going or anything.
Yeah.
It's very true. I mean, I think one thing that we as gay people are very, very good at, but we can also be very guilty of, is doing it's code switching, right? Where like you could be speaking to, say, the delivery driver comes to the door and he's got your Amazon package. Hey, mate, aye, cheers, bye. And then you could go and speak to like some lassies in the pub and you're like, you okay? How are you? You see, trying to like drop that is so difficult because for the longest time it's sort of been like we've had this advantage of being able to make women feel comfortable around us, but we've struggled to make men comfortable around us. So you've kind of got to sort of switch it up. And I think that can be quite difficult to overcome, especially living in a rural community, because you just don't know who you're going to meet. But in the city as well, it can be really difficult in the city. My experience is up there is like gay people don't quite understand what it's like for a rural person to go through like adolescence and stuff, and they almost have more of a, specifically people around my age, they tend to be a bit more egotistical. They tend to be a lot louder, and that can be quite daunting.
Do you think that comes from the oppression though that we've suffered as a community by younger gays are much more extravagant and loud and almost more fuck you and this is how I'm going to be, and I don't care what I offend or who I offend or anything, which is a good thing, because we shouldn't be bothered about other people's thoughts, but in the line with what you're saying, just maybe a bit too much.
On one hand, they shouldn't take for granted what they have. They shouldn't. I mean, there will be things that myself and Dylan will take advantage, I can't speak, I've just lost my English. There will be things that me and Dylan take just for oh my God, I can't say it. My brain and my mouth, for granted. My brain and my mouth stop communicating with each other. There are things that me and Dylan will take for granted from our generation of as queer young people. I just try to say queer and young in one word. It came out as Kwang. I love that. As Kwang people.
We'll keep that in.
As Kwang individuals, there are things we take for granted that you might perhaps not as someone who is 20 years older than us. That's just how it goes, and that's how it will keep happening as time goes on.
Yes.
But for people for people, let's say like 18 to 21, right? Those young queer individuals, they don't quite understand what we had to go through so that they're able to move forward without many obstacles. But it's going to be an absolutely shit time when those obstacles come up and they're faced with it for the first time.
Yes, I see what you mean, because you can't live in that world of protection forever. At some point, you have to move out of that world of protection. It's like a scene. If you've grown up, you've left school. If you're in Leeds, for example, and you're a young gay bloke and you sort of lived your sexuality throughout school, like yourself, Dylan, and then you go to the scene and then you end up having to go get a job somewhere and it's in the middle of Nestia, and then you're really going to struggle to cope with that if you're not ready for it, because you've lived a very different life, and that's going to affect people's mental health really, really bad. I'm going to ask you a question then about community and belonging. How important is the drag and our community, LGBTQ community, for mental well-being, especially in places where people might feel isolated? We have a lot of pockets of isolation, don't we?
It's massive.
Yeah.
It's something that if I'd have had prior to me starting drag, I would have met my community long, long ago, because I would have went to these shows. I would have went and watched local drag artists if it was available to me in Dumfries and Galloway prior to me starting drag.
Right.
Plain and simple. And there's people that we've met and people that have come to our shows that have now integrated with that community that we have in Dumfries, which isn't a massive community, but it's big enough. Like, they've integrated and they have met their people just by coming to our shows or by following us on social media. Like, it's a massive part of being queer in a rural community.
Yeah, I think it's true. And do you know what I was surprised at when I came here? The second year, that Pride at Port Logan, there must have been less than 12 people. And it was in a bus stop, the only bus stop in Port Logan, and they decked it out with flags. I just thought that is so cool and so good. Because, and do you know what I think benefits this part of the world, even though it's rural and it's sort of farmers and all of those things? There is a mass influence of people that come from cities to escape city life as they get a little bit older, maybe get a bit more money. Oh, I don't want to live here anymore. It's all a bit dirty and grubby. But they're generally people who have got money and then worked their way up into positions of power for whatever reason, whether it lecturing at school or uni and stuff like that. So you do have a lot of people that, I hate to say this, but I've got to say it anyway. There's a lot more non-working class people live in Dumfries and Galloway. So they've got a bit more ability to look at things on a sort of level playing field. They're not sort of brought up to believe that, oh no, these people are bad and these people are good and these people are bad. And that's one of the benefits of when I started working in Leeds as an 18-year-old. I lived in Wakefield and it was all very racist and homophobic and misogynistic and all that type of stuff. Most people there. I moved to Leeds, I started working in Leeds, and I've met so many different people of all colours and all sexualities and etc. And I think this is what helps us in this area, is having Kirkcudbright and Wigton and people that read books and, open the mind to stuff and don't just go, no, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to do this. So having those areas where there is intellects, I call them, and I'm not saying that people that work in class are not intellectual, because they are. That's just I'm not going to generalise. But people that are intellects just because of the jobs that they did are more likely to be open-minded to all sorts of different things, and that helps us a great deal, because then you have Port Logan having a pride, tiny little, 20 houses, and it's got a pride. You think, oh my God, we're moving somewhere. Maybe not as quick as we all like, but we're moving. So what do you think, Dylan, on that, on community and belonging?
It's massively important. I think drag has done such wonders for like this community in Dumfries, particularly with like, everything started and how we, I remember there, like, and I agree with what Joe was saying. Like, if there was things, like if there was drag that was like visible in Dumfries before I moved away to London, I would have like went to that sort of stuff. Like, you know what I mean? But then again, I was 17 when I moved away, so I'm not sure whether or not I would have been able to, because obviously it depends on like your age and all that sort of stuff. But like, I do agree that if there was stuff visible there, then there's a lot more. I think that was part of the reasoning behind why I wanted to like start doing drag stuff in Dumfries. So like Club Queer, which was at Chancellors, was the first event that kind of happened in a really long time in Dumfries. As in like, there wasn't really like a drag specific event, and then it happened. And I'm probably like most proud of that show just in general, just because of like how much it impacted the community and how much people like said that they needed it afterwards. They were like, oh my God, this is like something totally different, and it's made me feel more. And I had people telling me that it like really helped them with like their either their sexuality or like accepting themselves or like being more flamboyant. And they said it was so nice to have like one night where they could just like do more of it. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. I wish I was here more, like between that time and me moving away, like me moving back. Because I was in London when I did Club Queer. I was only up like every so often to like do these shows. And then I'm decided to move back in 2022. So I was like, oh my God. And that was when like the real community building started to happen, like between myself and Joe and the open arms and Urhus and all these different things that were kind of like snowballing from the beginning of it. Everything started to become a lot richer in the culture of like queer people in Dumfries and queer events, and drag was really the catalyst for that. So I really do think that drag has had such a profound effect on community inside of Dumfries and Galloway, like especially speaking to the queer community and their allies. I think it's really done wonders, I think, and it just keeps on getting stronger and stronger. There's more people that are coming out of the woodwork. It was like before, like when I remember when I first moved back, there was, Joe was doing a show called Speaking Queerly, which a trans individual had reached out. Her name is Joanna. I'm sure she won't mind me talking about
She'll
it.
be chuffed.
She'll be absolutely chuffed. There was a trans person called Joanna who reached out to Joe through the Speaking Queerly thing when they were on DCR, and she started talking to us through that, and she literally found her community through the avenues that were built up because of the power of drag. Because I think, and I don't know, like this isn't for me to say, but Joe, do you think that Speaking Queerly would have became a thing had you not have discovered Madam Joe?
No,
No?
absolutely not. Drag, it was Speaking Queerly was a radio show on Dumfries Community Radio, and
Yeah.
it was Les Ross who has the Open Arms, who was the chairman at Dumfries Community Radio. And she said, "We're needing someone to come and host this show. We think you'd be perfect for it." I've always had a love for radio and podcasting. So I jumped at that opportunity. I was like, oh, absolutely. And it was sponsored by Les and the Doogie Arms, which it was at the time. It was sponsored by them. It was like, we want an LGBTQIA plus show that speaks to the community. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. That's a bit of me. And that particular opportunity, it allowed us to reach so many people that we wouldn't have normally reached
Yeah.
without that. So Speaking Queerly would not have happened without Madam Joe being a thing. Absolutely
Yeah.
not.